Hi, thanks for joining me. I'm aka Rakxm, and joining me tonight is my good friends Shannon Brewer and Matt Live, the co-creators of Revolutionaries. Shannon is the writer, and Matt has been doing the letters for them. And guys, I'm just so proud of you guys. I've watched this as it started as just a simple idea that you guys came up with around a table with friends, and now here we are in print. So, talk to me. What was the hardest part of this journey for you, Shannon?
I think the hardest part for both of us is that we had never made a comic book before. We've worked in, Matt's done digital design, I've done writing. We've had this experience in the past, but we've never made an actual comic book. So we had to sit down and do the research of, what do you do when you make a script, or is it a script? Like, how do you write basically the comic book dialogue out? And we had to research that, and we had to research how you get artists and what you do with your artist, and when do you letter, and how do you go from concept to full complete comic, because it was something we hadn't actually done before. And so we turned to a lot of the different resources that we could find and kind of figured out what exactly we wanted our process to look like, and have just been kind of keeping it going over the course of time.
Yeah.
Very nicely done. And whose idea was it to take a band, Freerunner, and turn it into a comic book form?
Yeah, well, I play in a band called Freerunner, and the band's message has always been really inspirational. All of our music has kind of aimed to inspire people in one way or another, and we kind of thought, well, that concept would translate really nicely into a comic book. It's kind of the same thing as superheroes, and Shannon and I are big comic book fans, and we were talking about it one day and said, what if we took the band and made them superheroes, and then not only had a comic book where the band was superheroes, but also that would have music in it, and the music would kind of be a soundtrack that would go along with it, and then we could draw from the music to make the thing and sell both the comic book and the music.
So you're going multimedia with this?
Yeah, absolutely.
That is awesome. Is there anything else that we should know about that also ties into this comic book?
Yes. So we wanted to build, one of the things that we think make comics really strong is that they have these huge universes, and there's all this stuff that connects to them. And so for us, it wasn't just about making a comic. I come from a world of, writing kids books and teen literature, and so we wanted to do, how do we take this concept and stretch it across universes? And so in issue 2, there's a little boy who's saved by the Revolutionaries, and he gets his own children's book series. And it's him and a couple of people from his school who are in the 5th grade making the same difference and trying to learn how to use the concepts that they learned from these Revolutionaries doing superhero type things on a 5th grade level. How can they make a difference? And then there's interactive resources and materials that go on with that, including the #MakeTrueChange campaign, which is something Freerunner's been doing across their social media, of you showing us how you can be an revolutionary and what you're doing in your own community.
That's awesome. That is awesome, guys.
Yeah.
Was there any writers, any artists, or anything that you guys took inspiration from when working on this project?
Yeah, we are huge Mr. Miracle fans, and so for me, one of the first things that we did was, like I said, we were trying to figure out what does a comic script look like. And I have actually known Sam De La Rosa for a long time, and he did a speech one time where he's telling us kind of a little bit about what the script he got looked like and things like that. So I had a rough idea, but I went in and I looked at DC Comics. They do a DC Comics showcase, and they take new writers in, and you do this workshop for 6 weeks or whatever. But they have everything you need to know to get into this workshop on their website. And so I was reading all of the information there, and one of the things that they have is a script from Tom King for one of his issues of Batman. And it's completely broken down. You can see exactly how he writes it and what he's doing, so you know how to format your work when you send it in. And being huge Mr. Miracle fans, it was like, okay, this is somebody who I actually like what he's doing. Let me see how I can mimic the way he's doing it so I can get to that same process. And then we are also huge Peter Tomasi fans, and the work he did with the Goodnight Moon issue of Superman and the Declaration. He really finds a way to take the heart of the message and put it into the story. And he uses real world circumstances, like Superman being somebody who has the most unrealistic level of powers, and I mean he has everything.
Right.
And if he
Right.
doesn't, they will write it into the comics. And
For
so
convenience.
yes, and so this is a character who could literally do anything, and Peter Tomasi put him in real world scenarios and had him not use his powers.
Yeah.
And had him make a difference as a human. And that really played in a lot for us, because that's the whole point of the book is how do we tell people, like, yes, these are superheroes doing something, but at the heart of the message is that as a regular person, just making a difference in your own world is possible, and this is why and how you do that.
And we also are real people.
Right.
Which is kind
It's
of
a thing.
half the fun of that. And another big comic book for us is Watchmen. And Watchmen has these real world things. It's also another 12-part series just like this. It has these real world elements in the back of the book, journal entries and autobiographies and little snippets that you can read from that really broaden that and make the characters seem more deep.
Yeah.
So it kind of has the superhero universe and sensibilities of a superhero comic, but at the same time has the characters and the heart from an indie comic.
I was going to say that's one of the things, like, to go with the Watchmen thing is, for us, like, Watchmen was all about, like, how can I take these characters that you've all trusted and these thoughts that you've had forever about the superheroes and make them into the, like, the darker, grittier characters where it's like, maybe the superheroes shouldn't have this much power. And we were actually like, okay, let's also look at those tropes of superheroes and figure out how real world people can mimic those ideals and be good people and do good in the world. And so it did have that same effect in that we were like, we do want to look at the tropes and we want to see them. We want to see those tropes, but we want to use them as a way to tell people that they can make a difference.
Yeah.
Now, you guys are all superheroes in this, Matt, and how did you guys decide upon the superpowers that you would each have?
I actually sent out a message to the band and said, hey guys, if you guys were in a comic book and you had superpowers, what superpowers would you want to have? And the response was kind of hilarious because everybody got back with their own little versions of what they'd want. And everybody kind of said some version of flight or teleportation or something like that. And everybody just kind of had their own idea. And so we really based those, whatever their responses were and the things that they wanted, we wrote those in as their powers and then kind of used their personalities as who they are as real people to see how it would work with the powers and how the powers would work with them.
And I love it because everybody chose, like, something different. So it was like everybody had a specific power they wanted, and none of the members of the band chose the same power, except Rich, the drummer, actually, as everybody would send in what powers they wanted, he would be like, oh, that's a great power! I want that one too! And so I joke that I'm going to make a spin-off issue called One Man Band, and Rich is going to just have all the powers and play all the music by himself because he's just, like, determined to get all these superpowers.
Big drum things on his
Yeah, one of the big drums.
If I remember right, Rich plays just about every instrument too, doesn't he?
He does play a lot
So
of instruments.
it makes sense. He would be
Yeah.
a jack of all trades in that way.
And
Right.
Rich would love that.
Rich,
awesome.
Rich would absolutely love it.
Why did you choose to go with a limited 12-part series rather than like an ongoing thing?
So the album is 12 songs.
Okay.
So it kind of naturally worked from there. Is we took, as you know, I love dry erase boards and I love blocking everything out. And so I took a dry erase board and I wrote down, like, okay, the names of the songs and then what's the message behind that song. And I asked Matt, like, what, one word defines what the meaning of this song is. And we kind of broke it down from there. And then I went through and was like, okay, this is what I would do with that issue. And then I made, like, a deeper outline and a script and talked them through with Matt so we were all on the same page. But it kind of just naturally flowed that there didn't need to be issues that weren't parts of the songs because all of the songs tell the stories and all the issues come with that digital download. And what's really cool is because we do that, all of the lyrics from all the songs work into whatever their correlating issue is. So all of the lyrics from Revolutionaries are actually in this book as part of the dialogue.
Every single lyric.
A lot of them.
Most of them. I think with this one,
them.
there's, I mean, of course, like, the songs, like, have repetition and
Right.
stuff, so I don't continuously,
continuous,
work it in,
but-
but for the most part, yeah, all the lyrics do end up making it into the book.
Yeah, there's not a lyric
thoroughly
sheet
impressive.
like
Yeah.
in an album. An album, you can open it up and there's lyrics in the album.
Right.
It's not like that. It's more that it's worked into the dialogue. And, each book comes with a digital download of a song, so when you get that song and you listen to it, you can listen to it and then you can read the comic and say, "Oh, that's funny."
I get the
lyrics are in
tongue-in-cheek
there,
joke of the lyrics being in there, and that was really easy with issues like Revolutionaries because it's very straightforward about what its message is. But there are a lot of songs where it's more of a metaphor, so it starts to get a little difficult on how you make this metaphorical dialogue work into a straightforward conversation.
Right.
Yeah.
So
now, I have read this, and I do know that there's a lot of. It's very much a very like social statement. Like there's a lot of things that are saying like this is what we can do from any level that you're on.
Yeah.
Are there also going to be supervillains? Because this is a superhero story, there should be some kind of,
Absolutely.
Yes. So there are actually several villains throughout the series, and it does play into, like, this is the origin of the character. So we wanted to remind everybody, like, these are real people, and this is what Freerunner really stands for, and why it makes sense for them to become superheroes. But as the story goes on, in issue 1,
right.
And so, but as the story goes on from there, we start to see a little bit of both. We do still see them standing up for that social justice and making those statements, but we also see them dealing with actual villains. And one of the things is, like we said, like, we love those superhero tropes. So issue 2 actually has about 8 pages of them getting amazing gear and awesome costumes and things like that. So there is all of the regular elements of a comic book and the superheroes, and there are some incredibly crazy bad guys in there that they fight. So it does have those real superhero comic elements to it too.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That is really awesome. Now, I did notice that the 5 band members had superpowers in this first issue. There's one character that was also introduced that had a very, very obvious lack of superpowers. Shannon. Does Shannon ever get superpowers?
So, as a biased human being, because I am writing myself into this comic, I personally think I have the best superpower ever because it's the skill of organization, which is a superpower that not everybody in this world is gifted with. But like we said, we really wanted to bring in everybody's natural abilities and to not get like too spoilerly into it. We wanted to play into that, and for me, being an organization person who helps like the band with different things in real life, it was kind of natural that I would kind of take this oracle kind of position for them. And
Shannon's kind of the band manager in the comic because you guys probably haven't read it yet.
Right.
Shannon's the band manager.
Shame on you if you haven't.
How dare you not get an advanced reader copy?
Right, exactly. No, Shannon's kind of the band manager in here, and so she's kind of prepared for all of the things that we have. And so I guess we can kind of spoil it.
Yeah, I think it's
right. It's time. Issue 2 is going to be out here in a month.
Yeah.
In issue 2, of course, there's a scene where we have to reveal to our manager that we got the powers, and she catches us using them and kind of says, "Oh, I'm completely prepared for this situation. Don't worry, I have a file for this." And she can just reach into the file and grab out the "What if the band turns into superheroes" file, or gets superpowers, and immediately has a contingency plan.
That would be something you would do, Shannon.
Right, and when you go into Shannon, the character's office, in the comics, there's actually, like, the scene is she goes into the office and she's just pulling out different notebooks for different scenarios that she has lined up, and so
completely
she finds,
overplanned.
Like completely overplanned on, like, these are all the possible contingencies that could someday happen, and there's some hilarious options on her board of
Don't
things.
spoil anything.
Yeah, that I'm not giving away.
I'm excited for that.
That's a secret.
It's fun.
All right. Now, if there was any one person you could share this comic book with, who would it be?
Yes, so in the, like, non-specific human thing, but, like, if there was any one reader that I could put this comic in their hands, it's really that person, kid, teen, adult, it doesn't really matter, but it's that person who doesn't feel like their voice matters, somebody who doesn't feel like they can stand up and make a difference. I just recently was speaking at a school to kids and teenagers. They were middle schoolers, and we were talking about the fact that, not everybody is the stand on the street corner person who yells out, like, you have to make a change, like, we have to save the world right now, if we don't do this, the world's gonna end. Like, we're not all that person, but we can be the person who walks up and says, hey buddy, you've been doing this for a really long time. I brought you some water because I thought your voice was getting a little hoarse. I thought you might need it. Or the person who comes up and is like, hey, maybe if I could remake your poster and then it will get more attention. Like, I'm really good at arts and crafts and I want to make this poster. Or maybe we're just the person who's like, hey, I saw this on Facebook and I see this video of this person standing on the street corner and I share it so that all of my people can see it. We don't all stand up in the same way. But it doesn't mean we're not standing, and it doesn't mean we don't have that same ability inside of us to make that change. And so for me, I think the person I'd really want to give this comic to is the one who thinks because they're not the guy on the street corner that their voice isn't going to matter. I want to give it to that person so that they know actually it does. And every little thing you do, even if it's holding the door open for somebody when they're walking out of something, is something that can make an impact in the world.
All right, very well spoken. And on a personal level?
On a personal level, for me, my stepdad grew up. He grew up in San Antonio, and he wanted to be a comic book artist. And he used to draw comics in class, and they actually told him that making comics wasn't a job for a Mexican. And they continuously beat that into him, and so he stopped drawing comics. And I actually heard that story from my aunt, who she still remembered it. It was such an impactful story for my family that my aunt is the one who remembered it all these years later. And so for me, he was the one that always told me, and when everybody else was like, writing's not a career, or you need to get like a real job, Shannon, he was the one that would walk up to people and say, like, this is my daughter, she's a writer and she does amazing work. And so for me, he was always that person that kept pushing me to keep going for it. And so it's kind of like, hey, like, a kid from our community can make a comic, and it's right here. So personally, like, if I could dedicate a comic to somebody, if they did that like they do in books, this would be for him.
And you, Matt?
Well, on the real world level, it's kind of the same thing. I'd like to get this into the hands of more musicians because I think it's important to really connect comics are for everyone, as they say, and we need to connect comics into the hands of people who aren't necessarily reading them. And because it does tie in with music, and because you can get music with the comic book, I think it'd be cool for more bands to read comics, more people who aren't just kind of the nerd community who we've been marketing this thing towards, to get them into the hands of those people too, and really get them out there. And the comic industry is booming as it is, at this point, and it'd be great if more people kind of got out there and read comic books.
Yeah, and the kids and teens comics and graphic novels is the number one thing in publishing continuously over years, and so it's great to be able to say, like, hey, here's something for your market where it reminds you that you can make a difference. And I told the teens I was speaking to the other day that, we always say the generation before us is the reason for this problem. Like, they're the reason of, climate change and all of this. We're always sitting there and we're doing that. And I think that for our generation, like, we really want to make a difference. Like, our generation is constantly talking about getting out and voting and getting out and doing good things, but we're also still sitting around saying it's the generation before us that caused these problems, and we're spending so much of our time and exerting so much of our energy over breaking down this idea that it's not our fault, and we're not working on the issues when we're sitting there trying to figure out who caused them and how do we stop the people from continuing to cause them. And so I think that that's equally as important. Like, that's something that needs to happen, is somebody needs to recognize where the issues came from and start realizing how we get those changes made. But that means that's going to be our job as our generation is going to end up being to lay the groundwork for the kids and teenagers to actually make that change. And so I think that it's great that we have something that we can give to those kids and teenagers and say, look, guys, like, we're paving the way for you. Now you get out there and do it too.
Right.
So
that's awesome, you guys.
Yeah.
Do you guys have any closing things you want to share with the community before we go?
Visit us online. You can check us out at freerunnermusic.com, facebook.com/freerunnermusic. And the comic's available for purchase right now in Austin comic book stores. We've got our CD release party, or the comic book release party tonight. Tonight at Dragon's Lair Comics. You can meet Shannon and the band and our wonderful artist, Brett Dungan, who's...
extraordinary talent.
He's from Oklahoma, and he's in town right now.
He's like...
signing books.
You guys are going to get in on the ground level with him, because this is his first big project, and you're going to want his autograph now, because he's going to go insane.
Yeah, he's
going to
go really far with some of the stuff that's in this book.
And I'll be there too. too.
You'll be there too. And then we've got an after party 9 p.m. at Posse East, where the band's going to play a full electric set with songs that are from this comic book series, and also from our previous album, The Logic We Don't Understand.
Which also ties into the series.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So
Absolutely. And follow us online.
Yeah. And the links for all of Free Runner's different social media platforms will be posted down below, as will Shannon's, because she made it happen. But thank you guys for tuning in, and check out the review for Evolution Revolutionaries #1. It's also on my channel, and I will see you.
Subscribe to this guy, because he's
Thanks,
hilarious
guys.
and you love him.